Okay, good to see you. Venerable's here to bless us. Uh, Don, how's everything in California? You okay? Yeah, you're 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 muted, but that's okay. You had a smile on your face, so
I'm just saying we're having a nice rainy weekend, so everything is okay.
okay. So we're going to begin with trying to set motivation with words. Sangye churang soki chognam la changchu chapsu Dagi chunyen gipe sognam ki rola penche sangye dupasho. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly through the collections I create through listening to the Dharma. May I become a Buddha in order to benefit migrating beings. Sangye chodang soki chognam la changshu bardu dagni kyapsu chi Dagi chunyen gipe sognam ki trola penche sange trupasho. So thinking of those numberless migrating beings, migrating through cyclic existence by offering this ground anointed with perfume and strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, the four continents, the sun and moon, visualized as a Buddha realm. As a result of offering, may all migrators enjoy such a pure realm. And then after first offering, because if you're going to make a request, especially if you're going to receive teachings or requests, you should always make offering first. O holy and perfect pure Lama, from the clouds of compassion that form in the skies of your Dharmakaya wisdom, please release, please send down a rain of vast and profound Dharma precisely in accordance with us, the needs of us who are to be subdued by your teachings. Idam Guru Rana Mandalakam Niryatayami. Okay. So we're going to begin with a little meditation. So, like yoga, familiarity is so important. So if you can try to bring back the state of mind where you've relaxed your body, reminded yourself you don't have to think about anything else. You're going to focus instead on the respiration in front of you. And then once you've recognized the respiration, to hold it with the mental factor mindfulness enhanced or allied with the mental factor introspection. So your focus is on whether you're breathing in or out, just watching it, not creating it, not controlling it, and the length of your respiration. Hopefully, once you're relaxed, the length regularizes and you don't have spurts of quick breaths followed by long inhalation and so forth. They become uniform that way. If you find yourself multitasking, or you have this itch, you have to be thinking about something else, you can think as the breath comes in, like this, all new endeavors begin. We're born. Just at the end of that inhalation, when the breath is held, there's a period of apparent abidance, although we're immediately disintegrating. And after that period of abidance, maybe some lifetime, there's a period of dissolving, like growing older, seeing those symptoms. Then finally, a period of vacuity at the end when we, as though we had disappeared. Like that, there's a period of accumulating wealth, period of having it, period of it being used up, and a period of it being gone. Meeting friends, being with them, separating, rising, holding that position, falling, so forth. Having a little bit of success with that, turn your attention to the more subtle object of your mental consciousness, as though withdrawing your attention away from your eyes, ears, nose, tongue, and body consciousness, body sense bases, back to the heart chakra area. Just watching the contents of your mind. Not your eyes, not your ears, not your body consciousness. the contents of the mind arise sometimes spontaneously. They seem to abide for some time if we pay attention to them. If another thought interferes and we pay less attention to the previous thought, that thought begins to diminish. Previous thought begins to diminish in intensity, maybe disappearing for a while. This fluid nature of the mind, offering no resistance to the arisal or reabsorption of mental events. The thoughts don't go anywhere else. They just reabsorb back into the mental consciousness. Even when thoughts are present, those present thoughts infer that, or they can be used to infer that the mind is offering no resistance to their being there, is of this conventional clear light nature that the Buddha also called the developmental Buddha nature. We can change, we can develop all of the good qualities and diminish and eventually eradicate all of the bad, faults. And at your high school or college reunions, when people say, "Oh, you haven't changed," or "so-and-so hasn't changed," a lot of people don't, because they don't know the methods. They don't see the defects of their erroneous thoughts. They don't see the benefits of more virtuous thoughts that they haven't yet engendered. So they don't put any effort into trying to manifest them. So they maybe they do remain the same. The fact that we can recognize this and feel some courage and some joy in that recognition is due to this auspicious moment of leisure and endowment that the Buddha praised again and again in the sutras as being so valuable but very rare, difficult to create the causes of, and easily lost, quickly lost. Having the fortune to experience a life of leisure and endowment, such an auspicious moment like the moment in a overcast, rainy afternoon, a stroke of lightning, bolt of lightning, flashing across the sky, illuminating just for an instant. Everything becomes so clear that was previously murky and dark. With a bolt of lightning of understanding through listening to the Buddhist teachings and reaffirming maybe some basic inclinations in our own mind to goodness, or maybe inspiring us to create them anew. We have a new perspective on life. We can use this life not just for the present, for the appearances of this life, even beyond helping sentient beings this life. We can work for nirvana, our own nirvana, or more courageously, we can work to achieve total enlightenment, samyak sambuddhi, from which state we can benefit sentient beings much more than we can this lifetime. The activities that we do to help sentient beings this lifetime, we try to see as collection of merit, sometimes collection of wisdom, for that, to achieve that greater goal of enlightenment, where we can, with great patience, however long it takes, to the recalcitrant migrators that we encounter sometime, lead them sequentially out after life until they can achieve enlightenment. All of these beings have been our mothers numberless times, have been depthlessly kind, even when they are strangers, providing the infrastructure of our world, even when they are enemies, giving us the opportunity to practice patience, the unprecedented opportunity that in ordinary times we might not have the opportunity to practice patience that much, or to practice compassion, or to look at the big picture of emptiness and impermanence. Think, for their sake, I must achieve enlightenment. And to do so, I need to accumulate the two collections of merit and wisdom explained by Buddha in many of the sutras, especially the Prajna Paramita Sutras, the Perfection of Wisdom Sutras, where he explained in particular the accumulation of wisdom, realizing selflessness of person and selflessness of phenomena, emptiness, as re-emerged some 400 or 500 years after the Buddha passed away by Nagarjuna, who was prophesied by Buddha to reinvigorate the Mahayana path especially with his fundamental wisdom text, Mula Prajna, elaborated on by Buddhapalita correctly, and later by Chandrakirti in his clear words and entry into the middle way, the Majjhimaka Vatara. The text that we're studying peripherally through Lama Tsongkhapa's explanation of it, his clarification of it, Gompa Rapsel. So our study of this text should be motivated by the wish to achieve enlightenment out of compassion for sentient beings, wanting to be in a position to be able to help them in the most perfect way, to develop the bodhicitta and to follow the bodhisattva's activities. So think, I'm going to participate in the class today, listening, contemplating, and meditating to develop the successive wisdoms of hearing, contemplation, and meditation, in order to become enlightened for the sake of all sentient beings. I'm going to participate in order to become a Buddha, in order to benefit all mother sentient beings. Okay. Relax your body and mind. Hi, Suvansh is here. Jennifer, Paul, David is here. Good to see you all. Karen is also here. And iPhone is here. Good to see you. So, yeah, how are you doing? Uh, anyone have any particular Dharma anguish they need some Dharma massage of before we begin? You're all okay? I'm surprised with what's going on in the world. Yeah. So I think important to practice the mind training at this time, especially. Um, I've used this expression, unprecedented opportunity, when we as a way of translating something in Tibetan. Kind of, they say like finding a difficult to find treasure when you encounter beings of bad character who are seized by suffering or obsessed with evil and negative actions. To rather than become depressed or angry or whatever, to recognize this as an unprecedented opportunity, like finding a precious, difficult to find treasure, because it gives us the opportunity to stand back from our usual reaction to things. In the recent Nalanda Monastery newsletter, there was a quotation. They always have a quotation from either Lama Zopa or Lama Yeshe, usually, and it was reminding us, Lama Zopa reminding us that even rejoicing in the the suffering of our enemies is very heavy negative karma. And it's something that we can easily fall prey to. When you hear about the bombing or something and you think, yeah, got them, or whatever, when the side that you disfavor losing, if you rejoice in that, you're actually creating negative karma. Like in the general confession, when we say, the negative karma I've created, rejoiced in the creation of by others, and ordered others to do. The three ways that we can create physical, various kinds of karma like that. We can create it ourselves. We could order others to do it. If we have power, we can force them to create negative actions, or we can rejoice in negative actions. So that's something that we have an unprecedented opportunity now to look at and avoid, and try to wish, for the change of mind of people that are obsessed with negativity right now, with so much going on. Okay, enough. Basta. So, yeah. So we are at a point in our text in Thupten Jinpa's translation on page 367, if I'm not mistaken. And in the FPMT translation by Venerable Joan Nysel on page 209. Does anyone remember Venerable Joan's ordination name? I usually just think of Venerable Joan like people say Venerable George or something. Anyone remember? Paul's going into the deep vault, the memory vault there. like Sherlock Holmes. Okay, doesn't matter. Okay, so 367 Tibetan Jima's text 208 in FPMT, and it starts for Diana and myself. If you have the electronic version, you can search for, there's a, in brackets, question, the phrase, does this mean that the Chittamatra reasoning, refuting external reality composed of individual atoms on the ground that such atoms do not exist, does not negate external reality composed of dimensionless particles? I think I'd read that last time and maybe a little bit after that. You see where we are? Yeah, okay. So what does that mean? What kind of question is that? Venerable Jones' translation says, does this mean that the Chittamatra reasoning, refuting external objects composed of partless particles, right? Because the Chittamatra does not accept those kind of partless particles on the grounds that such particles do not exist. Does this mean that it does not repudiate external objects that are directionally partless? Okay, a little bit esoteric here. So Lama Tsongkhapa's comment to that is, I do not say such a thing is not negated by valid cognition. Even though that kind of external reality is negated, this does not mean there is no external reality at all. We should understand in the same way how, although temporally indivisible moments of consciousness and mental continua comprised of such moments are negated, this does not negate cognition itself. Okay, we have to unravel what that means. So when we're talking about indivisible moments, partless moments of consciousness and mental continua comprised of such moments. Okay, who can explain what that means? Mikhail, what do you think? What's going on here?
About the first part, partless particle, I think the main argument for Chittamatra refuting external reality is saying that there is no partless particles, and that doubt is asking if, well, maybe they would accept external reality with directionally, what would they say?
Yeah.
Not partless. Yeah, something like that. With
Right.
some other type of particles, maybe.
Right. So the important things to remember here are that some of the lower schools, starting from Vaibhashika, say that there are such things as partless particles. Some of the Sautrantikas accept that, but the Sautrantikas following reasoning, following Dharmakirti and Dignaga don't accept that. But the Chittamatrans especially have famous refutations of partless particles that we've gone over before, that any kind of particle, you could always say that it has a north side and a south side and an east side. Wait a second, is that right? East side, west side, upside, downside. There would have to be different particles. So there couldn't be a directionally partless particle. You could always find some kind of parts of it, and they use that to refute partless particles. So Lama Tsongkhapa says here, did I read what Venerable Joan said? Venerable Joan translates it, it is not said that they are not repudiated by a valid cognizer. What are not repudiated by a valid cognizer? Anyone? I thought so.
Presumably partless particles, Venerable George.
Yeah, yeah. They are repudiated by valid cognizer. Although they are repudiated, although they're proved to be non-existent by valid cognition, by these various arguments that there's any kind of particle has to have sides and so forth, it is not necessary for external objects to not exist. That is to say, it is possible, even though you repudiate partless particles, you can still have external objects created out of particles that have sides, that have parts. Hence, although temporarily, so that's talking about spatial parts, right? Also time, so although temporarily partless moments of consciousness and the continuums that are, or continua that are comprised of them, of those partless moments, are repudiated in the same way that you can disprove partless particles spatially. You can disprove or repudiate partless moments of consciousness, which also some of the lower schools accept. Although they can be repudiated, it should be understood that consciousness is not repudiated. In the same way that you don't say that there can't be external world because there are no partless particles. You can have other kinds of particles making up the external world. And in the same way, even though you can't have partless moments of consciousness, you can have, conventionally existent moments of consciousness that fade one into the other. And you can have, so therefore that it doesn't disprove consciousness. That's the long and short of it. Okay. Making sense? A little bit? In the opponent's view, Thupten Jinpa's translation continues, in the opponent's view, that means the Chittamatras, when external reality composed of individual matter is negated, is disproved, is proved to be non-existent, that's their point of view, then sensory cognitions undeceived with respect to their perceptions are also negated. Yeah, again, a little bit not clear right at the beginning. And since deluded sensory cognitions cannot posit facts, deluded sensory cognitions probably means here, I'll check in a second, it probably means mistaken sensory cognitions, because if you have a mistaken sense cognition, eye sense or ear sense, nose sense, that can't prove the existence of phenomena because of that mistake. It can't prove that mistaken thing is true. It can't posit facts. So the thinking goes, external reality itself comes to be negated. However, that was the Chittamatra view. However, here in our system, the Prasangika, we maintain that although deluded sensory cognition cannot posit a real object, such deluded cognition can in fact be a complementary factor for positing an unreal object. It can't prove a real object, but it can act as an aid for positing or proving an unreal object. Something is unreal, is untrue, is false. This is what Chandrakirti felt. This is Thupten Jinpa's translation of that. Does that make sense? Okay. There's some thinking, yeah. Suvash has got his thinking mudra. Paul has got his thinking mudra. Venerable Shankar, are you thinking? Oh, okay, good. I was Jennifer's thinking mudra also. Okay, so yeah. So yeah, so when it was talking about so here when it was talking about, what was it talking about here? Although temporarily, so in the opponent's view, when external reality composed of individual matter is negated, then sensory cognitions undeceived with respect to their perceptions are also negated. So that means here, Shengi Luki, it means in the tradition of the others, Chiro Chame Kekna, once you've refuted partless particles, Nangwala Matruwe Wangshe Kek. You refute the sensory cognitions, the Wangshe. Wangpo, when we say Wangshe, means the Shepa, the consciousnesses that depend upon the sense the sense bases that are unmistaken with respect to the appearance are also negated. So that means that you negate the fact that you have sensory cognitions that are undeceived. So in the opponent's view, when partless objects are repudiated, the unmistaken sense consciousnesses to which they appear are repudiated. They're not unmistaken. You know that they are mistaken. Since a mistaken sense consciousness cannot posit an object, remember when we're talking about positing, that means imputing or validating that something is an object. Since a mistaken sense consciousness cannot posit an object, external objects are repudiated. That's the Chittamatra view. But here in our system, we maintain that although a mistaken sense consciousness cannot posit a true object of comprehension, it assists in positing a false object of comprehension. It's becoming clear. Yeah, Mikhail, what do you think?
Yeah, thank you. I'm not very clear or sure about how to understand the very first sentence. When external reality composed of indivisible matter is negated, then sensory cognitions, undeceived with respect to appearance, are also negated. Why is that?
Right. So that's, I think, as I read Venerable Jones' translation a little bit clearer, when partless external objects, how does I can't see Thupten Jinpa's translation at the same time here. When external reality composed of indivisible matter. So so when partless external objects are repudiated or refuted, right? From the Chittamatra point of view, you repudiated partless particles. They would like to say that that means that there's no external reality.
Yeah.
When they are repudiated, unmistaken sense consciousnesses to which they appear are also proved to be false, are also repudiated.
Yeah, but why? Because a sensory perception see parts?
No, what it's saying is that once you've refuted that the object of perception is not there, partless particles, a so-called unmistaken consciousness that perceives those partless particles is repudiated.
Okay, so it's not really about the partless particles. It's just if there is no external object, then you have to say that your sensory perception is wrong.
It doesn't, you don't have to put the word external there. Well, yeah, when partless external objects are repudiated, the unmistaken sense consciousnesses, when it says Venerable Jones translation, maybe the unmistaken sense consciousnesses would be better rendered as unmistaken sense consciousnesses to which they are they appear are repudiated. In other words, you don't have any unmistaken sense consciousnesses to which partless external objects appear.
Yeah, thank you. I got it.
Okay. So then, Thupten Jinpa continues, this point is accepted by Aryadeva as well. So Aryadeva in his 400 stanzas, Geshe Zopa always loved to say, point out that sometimes in shorthand in the text, when you're reading the text, sometimes it will just say in the 100, meaning the 400. Do you ever encounter that, Mikhail, when you were translating some of the texts, if there were quotations from Aryadeva's 400 stanzas?
Sorry, I didn't catch the very beginning of yours.
So sometimes Geshe Zopa would say that he'd like to point out that if you're reading the texts, sometimes the Tibetan text will say from the 400 stanzas. Sometimes it'll just say from the 100. And you
right.
have to understand that it means the 400. So from the 400 stanzas, for instance, so this point is accepted by Aryadeva as well. Okay, so what this point that we were just saying, that just because you refute partless particles doesn't mean that doesn't mean that you're refuting external reality the way that Chittamatra would like to force it. So Aryadeva says this cryptic phrase here: one exists and the other does not, quote unquote. This is neither in reality nor according to the world. Yeah, so this needs a little bit of help. So this is, if you like to check these things, this is in chapter 16 of the 400 stanzas. Do you have these memorized, Paul? What's chapter 16?
That one I don't have memorized.
It's in the wisdom half. I know.
So this is chapter refuting the remaining counter arguments. So in Gyaltsab Je's commentary to this, which is part of the translation that Sonam Rinchen and Ruth Sonam used in the 400 stanzas of the Yogic Deeds of Bodhisattvas. Many of you have that text, the 400 stanzas text. So that's based on Gyaltsab Je's commentary, right? So Gyaltsab Je's commentary to the 400 stanzas is based on what, by the way? Paul, do you know? Mikhail knows.
I think it's on Chandrakirti's commentary.
Yeah. So Chandrakirti wrote, among the various commentaries that Chandrakirti wrote, he wrote a commentary on the 400 stanzas. So you have the 400 stanzas, Chandrakirti's commentary, then Gyaltsab Je's commentary to that, in the same way that we have the Tibetan commentaries to other of the Indian scholars. So in this, there's a lead-in to this verse. This verse is, this is verse 399, right? So this is the next to the last verse of the 400 stanzas. This is the verse that's being quoted here. And so the lead into that, Gyaltsab Je says, among our own sectarians, the Vijnapta Vadins, and all those who have not understood the actual meaning of the scriptures assert that consciousness is truly existent. Who are the Vijnapta Vadins?
Just another name for the Chittamatrans.
Right. Vijnana means is chitta, vada means proponent, so proponent of vijnana. They assert that consciousness truly exists and that external objects do not even exist conventionally. This is the lead into this verse. This is therefore shown to be wrong, for both are alike in existing conventionally, but not ultimately. What are the both here? So we're talking about two things: consciousness and external reality. So the Chittamautrians would like to say that consciousness truly exists and that external objects do not exist. This is therefore shown to be wrong, for both are alike in existing conventionally, that is to say, consciousness does exist conventionally, but not truly, and that external objects exist conventionally, but not truly, but not ultimately. So this verse, the way that it's translated in Ruth Sonam's translation says, to say one exists and the other does not is neither reality nor the conventional. Therefore, it cannot be said that this exists, but that does not. So Lama Tsongkhapa is only quoting two of those 4 lines there. So the commentary to that says, to say that one exists and the other does not is not a presentation of reality. It's not the way things are. Since both do not exist ultimately, what does that mean? Consciousness and external reality. Where am I? Since both do not exist ultimately and are not ultimate truths, nor is it a presentation of the conventional, since both exist conventionally, that is, consciousness exists conventionally and external reality exists conventionally, and they are conventional truths. Therefore, all 5 aggregates must exist conventionally, but not ultimately. Right? So it cannot be said that the mind and mental factors exist truly, while external objects do not exist even conventionally. That's the position of the Chittamatra, right? The Madhyamikas, so here it's not limiting it to the Prasangika, but also to the Svatantrika. The Madhyamikas too, they also accept both external objects and consciousness conventionally as they are known to the world. When assertions regarding the true existence of things and so forth have been thoroughly refuted in this way, it is impossible to state any refutation of the assertions regarding emptiness. It is impossible to state any refutations of, the proofs of emptiness and so forth. You can't, they stand undiminished. Making sense? Let's see here. Yeah, there we are. So as an explanation of that, Lama Tsongkhapa says, he, apparently that means Aryadeva, thus explains how a differentiation between external reality and consciousness with respect to their existence and non-existence cannot be accepted according to the standpoint of either of the two truths. Making such discrimination is therefore not the view of the master Nagarjuna either. Yeah. How does Venerable Joan translates that? This is so she translates that last. This is because it is taught that distinguishing objects in consciousness, right? We're talking about external objects and consciousness, distinguishing them as existing and non-existing, right? Where the Chittamatrans say that consciousness does exist truly, and that external reality doesn't exist even conventionally. This is because that it is taught that distinguishing objects in consciousness as existing and non-existing is not the presentation of either of the two truths. Therefore, distinguishing them in this way is also not the assertion of Venerable Nagarjuna, the Honorable Nagarjuna. Okay. You look skeptical, Jennifer. So, okay. I like to see Venerable Shanka is thinking, yeah, contemplating. So in this regard, yeah. Geshe-Zopa had said, I don't have the exact quotation here. This is, we're talking about this phrase, Yonam, what is it? Yona, Yonam. What does that mean? Yona, Yonam. Do you remember, Mikhail, from the
If it exists, does it exist?
Nyam means, in this case,
Oh.
equal.
Equal.
So that
Yona, Yonyam.
yeah,
If it
If-
exists in the same way. Yeah.
yeah. Paul?
No, I was just going to say, yeah, exactly. If one exists, the other equally exists, something like that.
Yeah. So if a consciousness exists, the context can be used in various places. If the consciousness exists, its object exists equally. If the consciousness does not exist, the object does not exist, let's say, for that person, right? Or you could say it the other way around. If the object does not exist, there won't be a consciousness experiencing that object. You can have a misinterpretation of it. You can have a conceptualization, wrong view of it, but you're not going to have a consciousness that knows that non-existent object. Okay. So now we get to the next section that Thupten Jinpa calls how to read the sutras. This is not a literal outline from Lama Tsongkhapa's text, but Jinpa trying to break off this section now, because now we're going to be talking about the sutras, how to interpret the sutras. Are they meant to be accepted literally and definitively what they say? That's what some hardliners would say. Let's say Christian proponents of biblical studies, there are different proponents, right? Some would like to say the Bible has to be interpreted literally and definitively. It's definitely true. That's what God said, or that's what Jesus said, or something like that. And then there are other theologians, let's say Christian, that would, or even let's say Jewish or Islam, because they also accept the Old Testament, the peoples of the book, the Old Testament. That there are others who would say that sometimes it has to be interpreted according to the situation. So here, how to read the sutras. In the Tibetan text, it simply says, Nipa la sum. So this is one of those brain teasers. You have to remember these outlines from way, way back. The Nipa that it's talking about, Nipa means second. So the second outline of what? So we are on, what did we say here today? Page 367 or something like that in Thupten Jinpa's text. So one has to go back to many, many pages before, and we'll get to that in a while, what we're talking about here is how refuting the Chittamatra standpoint does not contradict the scriptures. Okay, so this has three parts. First part, the intention of mind-only statement in the 10 Ground Sutra. So the Dashabhumika that we've referred to many times, that Chandrakirti relied on very much for his presentation in the Majjhimakavatara of the 10 Bhumis. So the 10 Bhumi Sutra. So in the 10 Bhumi Sutra, it also mentions mind only. So this has three parts. The intention of mind-only statement in the 10 Ground Sutra. Second, how external reality and internal mind are equal. Remember we said yonam, yona, yonam. They are equal with respect to existence or non-existence. That will come up again there. And third, the intention of mind-only statement in the Descent into Lanka Sutra, the Lankavatara Sutra. So two main sources. There are many sources, many sutras, excuse me. There are many sutras in which the term Chittamatra or Vijnaptamati were mentioned. But the two main ones that are being talked about here that are being quoted, there'll be some peripherally quoted, are the Dashibhumika, the Ten Bhumi Sutra that we're familiar with, and the Lankavatara Sutra that we've been quoting from recently. Okay. So that first one is dealing with the statement in the Dashibhumika, the Ten Bhumi Sutra and the 10 Grounds. So that says the intention of the mind-only statement in the 10 Ground Sutra has 3 parts. Again, establishing that the word only, or matra in Sanskrit, what's it in Tibetan? Do you know, Suvash, what the Tibetan is for matra? Sam. So we say sem sampa, or chitta matra. Matra means only or mere, and in Tibetan that's sam, like T-S-A-M. So establishing that the word matra, or only, does not reject external reality by citing the 10 Ground Sutra. Secondly, establishing this point also through other scriptures. So there'll be some, like I said, besides the 10 Ground and the Lankavatara Sutra, there's some other sutras that are mentioned to establish this. And then establishing that the word only shows the primacy of mind, that mind is the most principal, the important creator. Okay, can you hear me moving the lozenge around my teeth? I can hear it very loud, but you don't hear that? I can hear it in my own. I guess the teeth are connected somehow, right? So establishing that the word only does not reject external reality by citing the 10 Ground Sutra, that section begins with a statement from the Chittamatra, I guess, or maybe others. You, Majjhamaka, remain divorced of actual proof or reasoning probing suchness. That means a reasoning consciousness investigating suchness. You don't have any proofs of that, you Majjhamakas. But you fear being wounded by the world if you accept conventional truth. But because you fear being wounded by the world if you accept conventional truth, which is not the case, Majjhamaka doesn't have any fear of that. You have no choice but to accept the mind only, Chittamatra, as well as out of fear of being harmed by, as well, you fear being wounded by the world if you accept conventional truth. You have no choice but to accept mind only as well. What are the two things? You have to accept that your proving of emptiness is not right, and you have to accept mind only as well out of the fear of being harmed by the scripture. What scripture? The 10 Ground Sutra states. So this is being quoted by the Chittamatrans, right? Essentially. So this is the famous line, he will think thus, this world of 3 realms is mind only. What's that famous saying there? Ditar, kam sumpo dini, sem samte. Ditar. It's like this. Kamsumpo, the three kams, the three realms. Dini, these three realms. Semsamte. The last te is just like comma. There's something that's coming after it, after that quotation. This is actually, you can find this if you have the 84,000 .co translation. You can go to their website. I think we've even offered it as a PDF before, the Dashabhumika. So this can be found in the first chapter of the Dashabhumika, verse 444. Oh no, 448. It says, in their translation, it says, he thinks these three realms are mind only. So there's no controversy there about the translation. So the lead up to that verse is from verse 444, 4 verses before that, where it says, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva examines in that way the natural succession of dependent origination. This is going to be quoted again in our actual text here. So the context in the Dashabhumika is talking about the Bodhisattva. So if it's chapter 1 in the Ten Bhumi Sutra, what kind of bodhisattvas is it talking about?
The first level?
Yeah, the first bhumi. Yeah, so the first chapter is talks about the first bhumi. This is talking about the first bhumi bodhisattva. So the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, on the first bhumi, they've realized emptiness directly, right? They examined the way that the natural succession of dependent origination. So this is another way of saying they investigate the forward presentation of the 12 links, and it goes through all of the links. It says, due to the condition of ignorance, there is formation, meaning karmic formation. Due to the existence of formation, there is what? What's the third link, Mikhail?
Consciousness.
Consciousness, right? So that can be understood two ways, that the consciousness upon which the karmic seed is planted, or the consciousness many, many eons later, that when that karmic seed ripens, or if it takes that long to ripen, right? So it's talking about the 12 links at this point. So here, Lama Tsongkhapa's reply to that. So this is first of all stating the Chittamatra view that the Ten Bhumi Sutra seems to say that there is mind only, that there's no external reality and so forth. So the reply is, to this we reply as follows. Say the conqueror's words are like a field of precious lapis lazuli. This is a famous digression in Chandrakirti's text. Lama Tsongkhapa is more or less quoting it here. Chandrakirti sometimes gives these sort of descriptive kind of commentary. Say the conqueror's words are like a precious field of lapis lazuli. Failing to recognize it as lapis lazuli, you Chittamatrans, or you who speak of consciousness as a real entity, so that would include also others, Sautrantika and Vaibhashika, you mistake that precious field of lapis lazuli for water. You don't understand its preciousness. So you desire to fetch some water of real consciousness. In your desire to fetch some water of real consciousness, it's like the person who's thinking, the empty swimming pool is filled with water. They're going to dive in. You plunge into the earthen pot of your intellect, which is not yet hardened in a kiln. When, as a result, your intellect pot crumbles into 100 pieces, you become the object of ridicule for those who recognize this fact. The meaning of the sutra, therefore, is not as it appears to your mind. This lapis lazuli words of the Buddha are not the water that you imagine them to be that is truly existent and so forth. Making sense? You just read that, it's kind of hard to understand what's being gotten at there. Okay, so then there's a question. Well, then, it can be asked, it could be the Chittamatra or these other people can ask after we said that, what's the meaning of the sutra? If it's not that the three realms are mind only, that they don't exist as external objects, what does it mean? To explain this, there's a verse 684. So, Tubin-Jim's translation says, the bodhisattva who is directly facing the manifest. Who does that refer to? Louise, do you know?
I would have to guess post-meditative meditation and equipoise, because you can't, no appearances during equipoise.
So the bodhisattva who is directly facing the manifest, so this is referring to the sixth. Is that right? The sixth bhumi or first bhumi bodhisattva? Sixth bhumi bodhisattva. So that bhumi is called the manifest or directly facing, because you're directly facing reality. Of course, you've realized emptiness directly on the first bhumi, but there's something on the sixth bhumi when you have a special practice of the perfection of wisdom. That's what's meaning here. The bodhisattva who is directly facing the manifest realizes the threefold world to be merely consciousness. This statement is made to reject an external self or creator. It's not meant to refute external reality. It's made to reject an external self or creator and to understand that mind alone is the creator. When we talk about the creator of the world, there are different Vedic traditions. Suvash, are you familiar with some of the Vedic positions? No, not so much. Venerable Shankar? Do you know the nine different kinds of creators that are accepted in the various?
I remember reading about them a long time ago, but no, I don't remember.
Paul, do you know what these nine?
Creation, Venerable George, one creator is Brahma.
Okay, that's not one that's considered of these nine. But Paul, what were you about to say? Or were you're muted?
No, I was just going to say I don't remember. I'm sorry.
Okay. So we'll come to that in a second. So that was the verse. And remember, in Gompa Robsel, the verses are not quoted. They have to be inserted by the book publisher. So Lama Tsongkhapa says this statement, the following statement, quote, the bodhisattva on the sixth ground, which is called the manifest, who contemplates the omniscient gnosis and is directly facing the ultimate expanse of reality, realizes the threefold world to be merely consciousness, unquote. So that statement is made to reject an external self or creator and to understand that the mind alone is a conventional reality, and to understand that the mind alone, comma, a conventional reality, is the creator. Thus, the bodhisattva understands the mind alone to be the creator of the world. So what's this talking about? So in the Abrahamic religions that prominent in the world today, Christianity, Judaism, and Islam, there is a creator God. And in many of the ancient Indian systems, there was a creator God, as I think who was saying, Suvash was saying, sometimes we say Brahma, the creator. Sometimes we say Ishvara or so forth, some kind of external creator of the world. How did the world come about? It was not our doing, but it was created by an external God. The Buddhist understanding is that all of the world, the vessel world, and even the people that live in it, the beings that live in it, the inhabitants, the vessel world and its contents, as said, are all the result of karma. So that karma that was created collectively and individually is what causes that external world, not a creator God. That's pretty clear, right? Is that clear? No, that's pretty clear. So, thus the Bodhisattva understands the mind alone to be the creator of the world. This point is expressed extensively in the 10 Ground Sutra, Sutra of the 10 Grounds, the Dashabhumika itself, such as in the following. Yeah, so this is, again, this is the same section that what we were talking about before when it was said the Bodhisattva meditates on the sequential order of the dependent origination. So this is the way Triptan Jimma is translated here. It says, the Bodhisattva will thoroughly contemplate dependent origination in its sequential order. Ignorance giving rise to karmic formations, giving rise to consciousness, giving rise to name and form, and so forth. He will have the thought, the suffering aggregates, this tree of suffering, these come into being merely with no creator or experiencer at all. When it says the suffering aggregates, you can, what is that in Sanskrit? Suffering aggregates. We say dukkha skanda, right? So dukkha skanda can, instead of saying dukkha skanda, as the 84,000 translation we'll read in a second, translates that instead of saying the suffering aggregates, you can say the heap of this heap of suffering, or this pile of suffering, this pile of doo-doo that we have, the tree of suffering. These come into being merely with no creator or experiencer at all. He, that bodhisattva who meditates that way, will then contemplate, because of clinging to an agent, a self, karmic acts come into being. Right? The clinging is this first link of ignorance, right? As a result of that, karmic formations are created. Karmic acts come into being. Where there is no such agent, ultimately no karma will exist either. If there's no truly existent creator of the action, there is no karmic act. He will thus think, this world of three realms is mind only. All of these 12 links of cyclic existence, 12 links of samsara, which have been clearly distinguished and taught by the Tathagata, are also dependent on this one thing, the mind. So in the Tibetan translation, as Jimpa has the word one there. In some of the translations from the Chinese, it just says dependent on the mind rather than the one mind. So this is a famous statement in the Dashabhumika. Let me get back to here again. So this starting, if you have the Dashabhumika, you can see that this is in the 84,000 translation, which you can easily find. This starts with verse 141, chapter 1, first Bhumi, verse 444, which I'd read before. The Bodhisattva Mahasattva examines in that way the natural succession of dependent origination. And then it skips to verse 447. So Lama Tsongkhapa doesn't quote, Chandrakirti didn't quote all of the intervening points when it says he thinks of the 12 links in forward progression. Remember, you could talk about it in reverse progression, from the pure side, from the negative side, and so forth. There are 4 different ways of meditating on the 12 links. You wanted to remind me? Yeah, okay. Well, we'll take a break in a second. So here it says, so when we jump to 447, it says, he thinks when there is the mistaken belief in a doer, or as Jimpa says, an agent, since there is the conception of actions, he thinks when there is the mistaken belief in doer, there is the conception of actions. If you think there is a real self who is doing this, then there is the creation of actions. Where there is no doer, when you have the wisdom that realizes the self that you've been imagining to be the doer of your actions, the agent of your actions, does not exist in the way that it appears, in that case, when there is no doer, actions also cannot ultimately be found. Okay, there's no truly existent actions. And then the next verse, 448, says, he thinks these 3 realms are mind only. These 12 components of becoming, the division into which was taught by the Tathagata, are also based on a single mind. So the version that the 84,000 Translation Project used, I think the Sanskrit does exist, but there are various renditions. So some of them have the word single mind, some of them just have mind. And the Chinese translations, I think, leave off the word single. So Thupten Jinpa's, he just noted his note for this, note 651. If you want to make a note in your own text, he says, Ebid, that means from the same text from Dashabhumika, 22b 42. That's a mistake. It should read line. Line. Page 220. Anyway, so at this point, the 84,000 also had a note. It said, according to the Tibetan and Chinese, one or single is absent in the Sanskrit. So it's the word one or single is absent in the Sanskrit, but appears in the verses. It appears that ekachita has been corrupted into evachita. What does ekachita mean? Paul?
One mind.
Ekachita would be one mind.
One mind, right? Right.
And evachita would be mind itself, or just, something like that.
Right.
The mind itself. Eva, just an emphatic.
Okay. So I'm just going to read this and then we're going to take a break. So after that quotation from the Ten Bhumi Sutra, Lama Tsongkhapa says, this sutra, it means this citation, thus explains how things exist as mere this or that. It's not a very good translation of the Tibetan, I think, in Jimpa's part. This sutra thus explains how such things exist as mere this or that, with no creator. And when the meaning of mind only is explained, speaks of how the 12 links of dependent origination are dependent on the mind. Hence the word only, or matra, some, is found in the sutra, does not negate does not negate external reality, but rejects an agent that is other than the mind. So I think Venerable Jones' translation is a little clearer here. Her translation said, this sutra says that only that which is not a creator and a feeler, sorwapo, literally, that which is not a creator nor a feeler is established. And that when a meaning of mind only is explained, it is that the 12 links depend on one mind, on a single mind, or just the mind. Therefore, the term only in the sutra does not refute external objects. Instead, it refutes a creator that is other than the mind. Okay, so we're going to take a break for a second. Here we go. Hey, good that you're back. Let me just try to do something here. What am I doing here? Blah, 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 blah. Okay, enough. So we finished that. This sutra thus explains how things exist as mere this or that with no creator. That's the paragraph that we just read. So Venerable Jones' translation of that says, this sutra says that only that which is not a creator and a feeler, maybe you could say nor a feeler, only that which is not a creator and not a feeler, truly existent, is established. And that when the meaning of mind only is explained, it is that the 12 links depend on one another. Therefore, the term only in the sutra, means this sutra citation, does not refute external objects. Instead, it refutes a creator that is other than the mind. Okay, so that's where we got. So Lama Thupten Jinpa's translation continues, as for the opponent's thesis, which is being refuted by Chandrakirti here. So what's his thesis? What's the Chittamatra view that Chandrakirti is refuting? It's found in the summary of the Great Vehicle. What's that? Okay, it's a summary of the Great Vehicle.
Mahayana Vibhanga?
Samgraha, right? Mahayana.
Samgraha.
Which I think you or I can't remember who first told us that Karl Buchholz had a translation of. I always say his name wrong, not Buchholz, it's Brunholz, Brunhnholz, Karl Brunholz. I think. Is that another, or maybe there's another T at the end. Anyway, so let's read, first of all, how Thupten Jinpa has translated this. So this is supposedly the Chittamatra view that a Sangha writes in his Mahayana Samgraha. Here the scripture is this. In the 10 grounds, means the 10 Dashabhumi Sutra, the Blessed One, the Buddha, states, it is thus, the world of the three realms, this world of the three realms is mind only. So if you are interested in this, this is chapter 2 of the Mahayana Samgraha by Asanga, and verse 7. And this is how it's translated by Karl Brunholz. This is chapter 2, verse 7. How should those who have not truly awakened through realizing true reality infer mere cognizance? This is a question. The answer is they should infer it through scripture and reasoning. Now, as for scriptures, the Bhagavan stated in the Dashabhumika Sutra, it is thus, this samsara with its three realms is mere mind. So that's the context of that verse that Lama Tsongkhapa has taken out, just that statement. So it's saying, how should those who have not truly awakened through realizing true reality, so it means you haven't yet realized emptiness, how can they infer mere cognizance? How can they infer Chittamatra? So this is trying to explain the Chittamatra view of how a person can be led to an inferential cognition, a correct understanding that the world is mind only. They should enter it through the scripture and reasoning. As far as scriptures go, they quote in there, it quotes the Dashabhumika there. So at the end of that, Boltzholz has a very, very long note. So if you have that book, you can check so this is note 138. I didn't write down the page number in his book because I just have the electronic versions. It doesn't have the page numbers. He says, as Smithhausen has pointed out, Smithhausen was a famous scholar, I think he's still alive, especially of Chittamatra, but other things, German scholar. As he points out, this famous sentence is not only found in the 6th chapter of the Dashabhumika Sutra, but also in a number of other sutras. So he quotes in the Dashabhumika, and he quotes a translation by Jonas Ryder, which I remember using when we were at Instituto Lama Tsongkhapa. We didn't have all of the translations that we have now. Ryder was one of the first English translations I was able to get some kind of copy of, in the context of which this sentence appears as a discussion of dependent origination. So that's what we're talking about here. In the Dashabhumika, it comes in the discussion of the forward and reverse progression of the 12 deeds and so forth. Okay, I'll leave that to you if you'd like to check with Carl's translation of that. Let me see, is there something else there? Okay. So here the scripture is this. In the 10 grounds, the Blessed One states, it is thus the world of the three realms is mind only. So that's what a Sangha tries to use as the scriptural source for you to be able to become a good Chittamatrans. You believe this, you can infer Chittamatra because of scripture, right? Usually in order to develop an inferential cognizer, there's two ways of knowing things validly. You can have direct perception, or you can have an inferential cognizer, right? So to be able to develop an inferential cognizer depending on scripture, what do you have to have? What do you need? What kind of background do you need in order to use a scriptural citation to generate an inferential cognition? Paul's almost got it. It's just on the tip of his nose there. Well, you'd have to believe that the scripture was authentic and was verified by a valid person, right? So generally, we would say that once you develop a realization that the Buddha is a valid teacher through the various means of reasonings and so forth, in the Pramanavartika, once you've established that Buddha is a perfect teacher, then you know that his statements were Vajra-like words and could be relied upon and so forth. So that's what he's talking about, developing a valid cognizer depending on scripture. So yeah, in presenting both scripture and reasoning to prove consciousness only, so a Sangha also uses reasoning, a Sangha takes this sutra passage as his scriptural source. So this passage, the Chittamatrans depend on this passage in the Dashabhumika that we're going to see is meant to be understood in a different way. But anyway, they use it as their scriptural source for mind only. Similarly, in his auto commentary on the 20 verses also, the 20 verses too, so the 20 verses was written by Vasubandhu, and he wrote an auto commentary. If he was just commenting on 20 verses that was written by someone else, it wouldn't be called auto commentary. It's auto commentary because it's his own commentary. Vasubandhu cites the same sutra and explains how the term mind must be understood to include the concomitant mental factors and how the word only rejects external reality. So there's two places that we're quoting here. Sangha uses the Ten Bhumi Sutra as a source of mind only, and Vasubandhu does also. Historically, it was Bhavaviveka who first refuted the Chittamatra reading of the scriptural statement in the above manner. Chandrakirti undertook a similar refutation later. Okay, are we on the same wavelength here, everyone together? Nadine, how are you doing? Making sense? Yeah? I guess that was an affirmation. I wasn't sure. Okay. Okay. So now we can go on to the next point. You okay, Snehi? Making sense? So the next point is establishing this point also through other scriptures. So the point, what's the point? Having explained how the word only in mind only statement rejects some other creator to be the meaning of the 10 Ground Sutra, the text indicates how this very point is demonstrated by other scriptures as well. So now we talk about besides the Dashabhumika. So this is now the next verse, 685. Therefore, reading Jimpa's translation, therefore to enhance the minds of the wise, the omniscient one spoke in the Descent into Lanka Sutra, the Lankavatara Sutra. He spoke diamond-like words, crushing the Tirtika's lofty peaks. This was done to help get to the true intent. Okay, so, yeah, I don't have a note there. Yeah, so Lama Tsongkhapa gives commentary to this. Since rejection of some other agent is what is meant by the word only in the 10 Ground Sutra. So you should know this well. If someone says, what in the 10 Ground Sutra, what's actually the meaning of only in mind only? You should say that only the mind is the creator of the vessel world and the inhabitants therein. There's no other creator like Brahma or Vishnu or Ishvara or atoms or Pashupati or chance or time or whatever. We'll talk about it in a second. That's the meaning. Since rejection of some other agent, outer agent, is what is meant by the word only in the 10 Ground Sutra, to enhance the minds of the wise who are capable of realizing suchness, in the Lankavatara Sutra, we find diamond-like words from the omniscient one. Yeah, diamond-like, Vajra-like, crushing the towering lofty peaks of inferior views present in the minds of Tirthikas. Yeah. Is that right? So Venerable Jones says, therefore, in order to develop awareness of the intelligent, the exalted knower of all, that's what Jimpa translates, the omniscient one, in the Descent into Lanka Sutra, taught this Vajra, the nature of speech that destroys the lofty mountains of the Forders, the Tirthikas, in order to discern the intention. Okay, so Thupten Jinpa continues. So to diamond-like words from the omniscient one, crushing the towering lofty peaks of inferior views present in the minds of the Tirthakas. So Tirthakas is, who are the Tirthakas? Venerable.
Well, I mean, they were anyone who didn't believe in the Buddhist thought, right?
Well, from any of the school systems, you could talk about Tirthakas.
Well, I meant like originally during
The
the Buddhist.
Buddhist point of view, Tirthakas are anyone who doesn't believe the Buddhist view. From the, let's say, from the Samkhya view, they would consider Prasangika to be Tirthakas. But what does Tirthaka mean? It means someone who's proposing a way to get liberation that's wrong. Okay.
That's translated foreigners, right?
Yeah, forwarders that I think Jeffrey Hopkins translated as forwarders, meaning that set apart a way to forward over the ocean of cyclic existence, which doesn't actually get you there. They're not good guys. Okay, so in order to crush the towering, lofty peaks of inferior views present in the minds of the Tirthakas. So you can imagine the Vajras, these lofty mountains are being crushed by the Vajra words here. In order to do that, views that assert a self, primal substance, and so on as the agent creating the world. So that crushes, it destroys the views that assert a self, primal substance, and so on as the agent creating the world. This is coming in just in a second. These words were spoken by the Buddha to help get to the true intent behind the mind-only statements found in other sutras as well. The, quote, diamond-like words, unquote, refer to the following lines from the Descent into Lanka Sutra. So this is a famous verse in the Lankavatara. This is chapter 2. If you have Suzuki's translation, it's on page 70 of Suzuki's translation. It's verse 29. And let me first read what Jinpa has translated here. Person, he's talking about different things, continuum, aggregates, likewise condition, atoms, primal substance, and Ishvara, the creator. Oops. These I have explained to be mind only. Okay, so this is chapter 2 of the Lankavatara Sutra, verse 29. Suzuki translates it this way. At that moment, the Blessed One recited this verse. The personal soul, continuity, the skandhas, causation, which is here, we're talking about continuity rather than causation, atoms, the supreme spirit, the ruler, the creator, they are discriminations of mind only. So his note, Suzuki's note at this point says, this verse has strangely found its way here. So Suzuki was perplexed by the fact that this verse was stated here. So just to understand some of these words. So there are said to be 9 kind of creators in the Indian schools other than the mind. So they are the following. Atoms. So I say atoms, not atoms, not like Adam and Eve. So who believes that? The Vaisheshikas and others believe that the world comes about, everything comes about from atoms that are truly existent and there, and they just accumulate and different things come. Maybe it's almost like Western science, right? Certain scientists, even the brain, all the mind supposedly comes about from atoms ultimately. So that's one. Second creator, the supreme spirit or pradhana. What's that in Sanskrit, Paul?
Well, pradhana would be the Sanskrit, I think.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry. What is it?
I think is that Tsowo, I think, maybe?
Soul, right? Right.
Hmm.
And so when we talked about the Samkhya system, so the first one, atoms is a position of the Vaisheshikas, that everything comes about. That's the creator of the world. The Samkhyas say that so, this fundamental principle is another way we translated it, is the creator, that things are already there, right? But it manifests them and so forth. So the third one is the king or ruler, which is Ishvara, which is considered to be in the Nyaya and yoga traditions. Nyaya, I think, means logic, right? In the logical systems, considered Ishvara, in those that talk about a creator, they talk about Ishvara being the creator, not so much Brahma. And then fourth one, so we talk about atoms being the creator, supreme spirit or fundamental principle being the creator, the king or ruler, Ishvara, being the creator. Then you can talk about the creator of persons, Prajapati. Have you heard of Prajapati before, Venerable? What is Prajapati?
Yeah, Prajapati. Yeah, sometimes it's also like used for the name of king. Like Praja is, the population, the people, and Pati is the father or the leader.
Yeah, so good. You pronounced it better than I.
Well, I did a Bengali pronunciation of Prajapati is Bengali, but Prajapati is Sanskrit or Hindi.
Yeah. So Pajata, I think Pajapati in sense in Kathmandu Valley. Is there some place that's related with Prajapati? So sometimes considered to be a goddess. So Prajapati is the creator of persons in the Vedic religion. So Praja, what does ja mean, Paul, in Sanskrit?
Ja is to be born.
Born. Praja is maybe making born, that who makes born. So that's Prajapati. Prajapati is the creator from the Vedic point of view. That's the fourth kind of creator. Then, without noting any particular system, some people say that time is the creator, that things come about at the right time. Time is what in Sanskrit, kala, like Mahakala or Kala Chakra. The sixth creator is said to be nature or svabhava, that everything just comes out of nature itself. Doesn't say which systems accede to that. And then there is a seventh kind of creator that some accept, that is Yadricha. Have you heard of that before, Paul? Yadricha. So this is said to be chance, accident, or something spontaneous. If you check in Monier Williams, YAD, then the vowel R, CH long A, Yadricha, it mentions all of these chance, accident, spontaneous. So in other words, that things just, if you ask someone, some people, why did that happen? It's just the way it is. It just happened. Right? It's just by accident or spontaneous. And then the eighth kind of creator is considered to be fate, destiny, or the fixed order of things, which in Sanskrit is niyati. So some people believe that, they believe that destiny, this is how things were meant to be. This is the fixed order of things. This is how things will happen. What do we call that in the West? We have a name for that, don't we?
Is what, fate or something like
Fate
that?
something.
Determinism?
Maybe determinism or something like that. And the ninth one, self, atma or purusha. So some believe that persons create the world. Okay, so those are the nine kinds of creators. So in this one, it's just mentioning some of them. This verse, the Thupten Jinpa translation, he said, person, that's one of the nine, continuum, and aggregates, likewise condition and atoms, primal substance and Ishvara, the creator, these I have explained to be mind only. Okay. So there is another translation of the Lankavatara Sutra by that Western translator named Red Pine. It goes by Red Pine. He has some Western name, I've forgotten. So he also has this from chapter 2, Mahamati's questions. So Mahamati is the interrogator at this point in the Lankavatara Sutra, right? Mahamati, Lodro Champo, Lochen. So he says, chapter 29, note 302. The Buddha then repeated the meaning of this in verse. A continuous person in the skandhas, conditions and motes of dust, the creation of a powerful Lord, projection of nothing but mind. So I think he doesn't have a good understanding of the context of this. So he's talking a continuous person rather than person and continuity being two different things and so forth. Okay, I'll leave that. So Thupten Jinpa's translation of Lama Tsong Khapa continues, thus the sutra states that none of these creators proposed by others, we talk about these nine kinds of creators, from the person to the creator Ishvara, when none of them is the agent, when none of them are the agent, none of them is the agent, mind alone is the creator. So this is trying to explain again why you can understand when it talks about mind only, it's not talking about the way that Chittamatra would like to say it, but that mind is the main creator of the world, not an external Ishvara or Pashapati or whatever. To explain the meaning of the sutra, the text says, so again, he's quoting the next verse from the Madhyamaka. Based on their own treatises, the Tirthakas postulate such things as the person and so on. It would mean as the creator. Seeing none of these to be the agent, the Buddha said that mind alone is the creator of the world. Jeremy, what do you think? You have a doubt about that?
So here the Buddhist position is being presented as mind alone being the creator of the world. And so my understanding from the Prasangic point of view would be to say that the world exists independent upon being merely designated by the mind, which seems to be slightly different to saying that the mind is created by the world. Am I wrong about that?
So we're talking about different things here. So different levels of subtlety. So when we talk about dependent arising, why things appear to the deluded mind. To the Buddha's mind, dependent arising has no particular appearance, but depending on the karma of sentient beings, pretas may see a pool of water as pus and blood, and the gods see it as nectar, humans see it as water, and so forth and so on. We have our own individual perception of the external world, depending on our individual karma, and we have a general perception of the world that we share with others, dependent on collective karma. So going from the other point of view, why does the world appear to all of the inhabitants in a generally similar way is because of the collective karma of them. Animals will also, if we're running through the forest and we run to the right to avoid a tree, the fox that's chasing us also sees the tree and goes to the right. So they see the world collectively, generally the way we do, but they have particular ways of interacting and seeing it depending on their karma, like say, for instance, pretas and gods and so forth. So let's see here. Yeah. So remind me, Jeremy, further, what was you had some other part of your question there.
I was just questioning the use of the word or the terms that the world is created by the mind, or that the world is the mind. Didn't seem to quite match the Prasangika view.
My short-term memory had forgotten the thrust of your thing there. Right. So when we talk about the creator of the world, we would say that the world and its inhabitants are the result of karma. So what has created karma? What has created the collective karma and the individual karma? The mind. Nothing else creates karma. Plants that do not have mind do not create karma. Stones and rocks and my Subaru, which are innate objects that have no mind, although artificial intelligence may try to change that, they do not create karma. Something without mind does not create karma. So you could say that the world is created by mind because the mind has created karma, and once that karma ripens, it creates the vessel world and the inhabitants therein. Does that help a little bit, Jeremy?
Yes, thank you. Yep.
Okay, so thus the sutra states that none of these creators proposed by others from the person to the creator Ishvara is the agent. Mind alone is the creator. To explain the meaning of this sutra, the text says, based on their own treatises, the Tirthakas postulate such things as the person and so on. Seeing none of these to be the agent, the Buddha said the mind alone is the creator of the world. We read that. We just read that before. So then the commentary to that says, so of the various things postulated by the Tirthakas, based on their doctrinal viewpoints presented in their own treatises. So remember we talked about these 9. Some of them were quite aligned, like Anu, the atoms was the creator of the world, was considered, atoms were considered to be the creator of the world by the Vaisheshikas, and the Samkhya's believed it was the fundamental principle and so forth and so on. So those are Tirthakas from the Buddhist point of view. The various things postulated by the Tirthakas based on their doctrinal viewpoints presented in their own treatises, such as the person and so on, including the continuum, the aggregates, and so forth. Seeing none of these to be the agent, the Buddha said that mind alone is the creator of the world. Seems pretty simple so far, right? Don, you're happy? Yeah.
I'm grokking.
You're grokking. Okay, good. So the translation continues. The reference to Tirthakas in the root text should be understood in broad terms. Even some followers of the Buddha, some fellow followers of the Buddha, other Buddhist traditions postulate the continuum or the aggregates as being the creator agent. So the word agent and creator can be applied to the same word. So in Tibetan, we say chepapo, the doer, the creator, the agent, right? So isn't that right? Who creates actions? So do the aggregates create actions? You have to think about that. Form aggregate, doesn't it create actions? Okay. But in terms of being, usually we would say the person creates actions, right? So some people postulate that the continuum of the aggregates is a creator, or the aggregates themselves as being the creator. From the point of view of Prasangika, they would be, you consider them tirthakas. They're proposing a forward a means of crossing samsara that's not correct. Alternately, one could say anyone who conceives such things as a person to be the agent does not qualify as a Buddhist. Whoa! We just said a second ago the aggregates and continuity are not the agent. Even the person is not the agent. Is that right, Paul?
Yeah. Well, wait a minute. Sorry, I was going to ask something else, but then you could. No, I was just going to.
You ask first what, because it's on your mind, so you don't lose it.
Oh, I was going to ask when he says even some followers the Buddha posit the continuum or the aggregates as being the creator agent, as being the agent. Is that referring to the lower schools who, when they look for the person conventionally, find it as the continuum of the mind or imputed on the basis of the aggregates? Is that who they're referring to?
Or one of the aggregates itself.
Or one of the aggregates itself? Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's what's being referred to there. Yeah.
Okay.
So what it says alternately, I don't not let you get off the hot plate here. Alternately, one could say that anyone who conceives such things as a person, quote unquote, to be the agent, does not qualify as a Buddhist. They would be a Tirthaka. Why is that?
Sure. Well, I assume that's referring to was it the Pudgalavadins who were that one of the 18 sub-schools,
Maybe.
right? Who asserted a person?
Maybe. This is Venerable, how did Venerable Joan, did she translate? She's, in some of these sections, she follows him quite closely. What is this? This is just before the verses from Precious Garland. So she said, in accordance with that is just like in this and that tenet of their own treatises, the Forders propound the person and so forth. That is the continuum, the aggregates and so forth, to be the creator. Not seeing them to be a creator, the conqueror taught that only mind is being the creator of the world. Saying that, quote, the Forders, unquote, in the root text, is with the thought that it is mostly them, in that Dharma practitioners, Buddhists, also impute the person, the continuum, and so forth to alone be creators. On the other hand, those who conceive persons and so forth to be creators are also not Dharma practitioners, Buddhists, in that, like the Forders, they do not unmistakably realize the meaning of Buddhist teachings. They don't understand it. They don't unmistakably realize it. That means they mistakenly think about it. They approach the Buddhist teachings mistakenly. So why is that? Alternately, one could say anyone who conceives such a thing as a person to be the agent does not qualify as a Buddhist. So when we talk about creating karma, We say karma is created by ignorance. And because a person has ignorance within their continuum, the person can also be considered to be the agent, right? Is that right? Remember the example of cutting the tree, chopping the tree? The prank call from area code 203. So the actual agent of the action of chopping is the axe head, right? The imputed agent or the distant agent is the person wielding the axe, right? So the person, what would we say here? What was I reading? On the other hand, those who conceive person and so forth to be the creators are also not Dharma practitioners. So if ignorance is creating karma, or virtuous minds and the mental factor sempa, intention, is creating virtuous karma, the person is creating virtuous karma as the secondary agent, the one who's wielding the acts of ignorance or of virtuous karma, right? So why isn't that? So one could say anyone who conceives such things as a person to be an agent does not qualify as a Buddhist. How can you say that? Isn't the person? On the other hand, Venerable Jones said, those who conceive the person and so forth to be creators are also not Dharma practitioners, Buddhists, due to the fact that, in that, like the Forders, they do not unmistakenly realize the meaning of the Buddha's teachings. So it's talking about a person, the people who believe that a substantially existent person or a truly existent person is the creator. That's what's being meant there. So the term tirtaka, going back to Thupten Jinpa's translation, is a general broad term. It's not referring only to non-Buddhists. It can refer to some Buddhists who have the wrong interpretation. And even if you were a member of another school, you could talk about others as being tirtakas because they're, from your point of view, they're proposing fords to liberation that are mistaken. So now he's quoting the precious garland by Nagarjuna, which is, if you have a translation, it's verses 61 and 62 of that. Rinchen Tengwa Kyang. So Thupten Jinpa translates. We'll just read this and we'll read this in its commentary and then stop. Those who assert person and aggregates, the Samkhya and Ailukyas and the Digambaras ask if they speak of transcend to those who assert those things as a creator, ask them if they speak of transcendence of existence and non-existence. Not clear. Therefore, what the Buddhists have taught, that which is immortal and profound and transcends existence and non-existence, know this to be unique to his teaching. There we go. So when I translated, I think this is from my translation of the Majjhimakavatara, because this is quoted in the Majjhimakavatara Bhasham, right? The precious garland. It said, ask the worldly ones, the Samkhyas, the owl followers, which is a name of a particular sect of non-Buddhists at that time, as well as the Nigrantas, the naked ones, who propound that the person in the aggregate, who set that forth, ask them if they propound what passes beyond is existent or non-existent. Oh, I think that's a little more clear. So it's ask them what goes beyond, what is liberated, is that exist or not exist? Remember of these various kinds of questions that the Buddha didn't answer. This in that same vein. So let's say the Buddha who has the Tathagata who has gone to the other side, does he exist or not exist? So the Precious Garland is saying, you should ask them whether it exists or not exists. Therefore, the teachings of the Buddhas explained as deathless, past beyond existence and non-existence, profound and exclusive doctrine, quote unquote, should be known. Okay, so I'll just read what Lama Tsongkhapa said about that. Thus, Nagarjuna says that among those who assert person and aggregates as possessing substantial reality, as though they're substantially existent, if any appear to speak of something that transcends the extremes of existence and non-existence, ask them what it is. As something that goes beyond this life. Does it exist or not exist? What is it? They will have to say, they will have nothing to say about it. Therefore, Nagarjuna says, we should know that the teaching that transcends the extremes of existence and non-existence is unique to the sublime Dharma, a distinctive feature that can be not found in other teachings. Okay, so that's where we're going to start. We'll just repeat that next time. That's where we're going to end today. Okay. Yeah, Venerable Shanka, good to see you in your robes.
Thank you. I just wanted to mention that there's a great treatment in His Holiness's book on the Science and Philosophy in Indian Buddhist Classics, Volume 3, has a great treatment of all the Indian schools, all the Nigranthas and whatever, Digambaras and the Aulukyas and all that stuff. So, yeah.
So what's the volume 3 of which?
Volume 3 of, oh, you can't see it, The Science and Philosophy in the Indian Buddhist Classics, with His Holiness, I guess, yes, conceived and introduced by His Holiness and edited by Tupajinpa, and introductory essay by Donald Lopez.
Okay, thank you for that. Yeah, I think you may have mentioned that before when we were talking about the Samkhyas, about production from self and so forth. Okay, how are you feeling? Anyone have any questions? Snehi, you okay? Yeah. Jennifer? Kim?
Yes, all good. Thank you, Venerable.
Yeah. Rachel, you okay?
I have a question. The Venerable George, this distinction of persons, continuum, and so on, these 9 different creators, and pointing it out, is it? I mean, the aggregates of the aggregate of the consciousness is somehow either is it in conjunction with other aggregates, or is it different from the mind? I mean, what is the sort of connection between looking at the aggregate of the consciousness and now being kind of unique, that it's the mind only is the creator? So how is that not the same thing?
So there are different things here. So some of them propose an outer creator, right? Some of the non-Buddhist schools. And say the Abrahamic religions are like that also, like the Samkhya or the materialists today are like the Vaisheshikas, the atoms create the world. Those that are more aligned to the Buddhists that say something like the person creates the world, they're saying that the person is substantially existent, so that can be refuted, or that the continuum of the aggregates are the person, so that the continuum creates the world. That can be refuted because they're assuming the aggregates to be substantially existent and inherent and truly existent. So that's the connection there.
Okay.
Okay, so we'll have a chance to unravel some of these other questions on Monday in discussion group. Let's now try to dedicate the virtues that we created. Really, the world needs it right now, needs our merits. As a result of these merits, as a result of these virtuous actions that I've created, may I quickly become a Buddha, a Guru Buddha, and as a result lead all beings without exception into that very same state. That's our ultimate kind of dedication. We can dedicate also sequentially along the way, that whatever way these virtues ripen, may they be the cause of my continued Dharma realization. Or as said in the prayer to Maitreya, may the supreme precious bodhicitta that has not yet arisen arise and grow, and may that which has arisen not diminish, but increase more and more as a result of these virtuous actions. When they ripen, may they bring that about. And for the prayer of the quick return of Lama Zopa, peerless teacher and assembly of children of the victorious ones, Shravakas, Pratika Buddhas, victorious Losang father and sons, together with your lineage, all objects of refuge of the infinite realms, please bestow upon us here and now the virtue and goodness to accomplish this prayer. In upholding and spreading the Muni's precious and complete teachings through explanation and practice, you, Lama Zopa, wore the armor of patience that is never discouraged. Incomparable Venerable Guru, to you I make request. Sole gateway through which all benefit and happiness emerge, while striving exclusively for the welfare of the victorious one's teachings, for the welfare of mother living beings. You, Lama Zopa, suddenly departed to peace. You passed away, at which point I was bereft. Here it says, I lost hope. Nevertheless, through the undeceiving truths of the oceanic blessings of the three jewels. The blessings of the three jewels are like an ocean. And by the truth of the great waves, to the fact that the bodhisattvas have bodhicitta in their mind stream, the great waves of their activity, by the truth of those things as being true, may the smile of a new reincarnation swiftly beam in glory for us fortunate disciples. Finally, for all of our gurus, you who are my eyes, were my eyes, are my eyes, will be my eyes for viewing all the infinite scriptures. Praying also to be able to meet Mahayana gurus in future lifetimes that can be our eyes for, taking the cataract of ignorance off of our eyes so that we can understand the scriptures. Supreme gateways for the fortunate ones traveling to liberation, engaging skillfully, moved by mercy, illuminating spiritual friends. I make this request. Please live long and stable lives. And if you can dedicate the virtues that we've created also for the diminishing of the rampant delusions in the minds of sentient beings right now, especially in the Gulf area, all the way from Palestine up to Gaza, Israel, up into, Iran and everything. Just so much chaos in how the mind then being disturbed creates so many other problems for others. To dedicate our merits, that due to these merits may the minds of sentient beings be subdued and reach some kind of calm. So thank you very much. Maybe see you on Monday. Let's hope. I hope. At any rate, see you next Saturday. Doris, was there something else I was supposed, you reminded me there was something else I was supposed to say.
the third anniversary of Lama Zopa's passing on Monday.
On Monday. So the day of our discussion also, so we'll do some prayers for Lama Zopa on that. That's the third anniversary. So theory, he could be three years old, probably not yet ready to be identified. Give him some time. Anyway, look forward to seeing you on Monday, or at least next Saturday. Take care.
Thank
I
you,
just
Venerable.
wanted
Thank
to
you, Venerable
say
George.
Thank you, Venerable.